What's up, guys? So back in the garage, still waiting on parts for the S13 over there. We got new wastegate set up, but we are still waiting on our harness. So now we are getting into the Toyota Chaser. So as you guys kind of saw in the last video, this nice table we got going back here. We put a semi-built 2J in this and end up getting a rod bearing shear off. So now we have our nice table of parts here. So we were going to fix this, but then we ended up finding cracks in the sleeve and like rust pitting. So that's no longer good. So in this box over here, brand new from Toyota, we have a GTE short block. So I'm gonna get these switched up on the stands and show you guys how to assemble a 2JZ engine today. Alright, so got everything switched out. Here's our brand new 2J GTE bottom end. Everything all nice and clean. All the OEM markings like you'll get. So now it's just to start cleaning the prep surfaces and assembling the whole engine. Already cleaned out the old oil pump. It's a drift motion CNC pump. Cleaned up the old pan a bit, and then still have to clean up the head and a few other parts, but we can do that as we're going and get this thing together to get back in the car hopefully this week. We were waiting on a set of O-rings the whole time here. So you have two that go on the front here and then one on the bottom here, and that's for just all your oiling. So couldn't really do much without that. Didn't want to put on the head beforehand because it makes it harder to turn over. So typically you want to assemble the bottom end first with the pans and then work your way up. Alright, so the new bottom end also comes with brand new dowels. So we will need to install these prior to the oil pump. So the first ones you're going to do are these two smaller of the dowels that are like this. The ones with the holes in it. And then you get one that goes in the bottom left portion here. Just lightly place that in there, and then one in here, and then you can just tap that in with the hammer. Should just go either way. So there's a taper on both ends, and then you could just take a little hammer and just give it a light tap until you kind of hear the note change, and that lets you know that you're bottomed out on the block. And then we're going to end up doing that for the top for the head, and there's some for the rear main section, and that should be it. Alright, next we have our MazWorks hardware kit. So this is about 80 bucks. It comes with all the hardware you need. Even though we kept it all, we figured may as well refresh. Here's the part number. I believe I got this one either off in Juku or Drift HQ, but I'm sure you can find it pretty much anywhere. And now we got the oil pump cleaned up and the face for the oil pump cleaned up on the block. So we're gonna get our sealant on there. We have our O-rings on already. Just have to make sure that they don't fall off during install, and then get that glued on there. Alright, so we have a nice bead of silicone on here. You want to stay on the inside the whole ridge. You don't want to fill up those second slots. That is for the overflow of extra sealant there, because that's where the O-rings are going to seal. So you don't want to get silicone on your O-rings. So now we can get this on there and slap it on the engine. Alright, so covers on. You want to make sure not to pinch your front main seal. You may have to tap it on with a hammer just to get it seated on the dowels, especially if they're brand new. So we just have to get all the bolts in. One that may be missed often is under the tensioner bracket. So just don't forget that one. And then there's two longer ones that go in this hole and this hole. Alright, now that the bolts are all cinched up, again, there's your long one here and here. We are setting our torque wrench to 15 foot-pounds and just get all these torqued up. One little click, and simple as that. And then you could just work your way around. Pretty simple. It's not like the cylinder head. There is obviously an order for everything, but something like this, it's not going to really matter because it's not a high stress point of load. And here's your other little hidden one down here. And then as you can see, there's a nice little bead coming around most of the spots that you can see. And then it kind of pokes out of the bottom there on each side. So now we can get to the rear main, and then the upper pan goes on after that. Alright, so same deal with the rear main. Just get that all good and clean and then put on the sealant. Probably should have put the dowels in beforehand because it's easier when it's off the stand, but I use a little pry bar and hammer trick. So we'll get it stuck on. Got to use 2 hands so I don't get goop everywhere, and then we will come back to that. Alright, so the housing is sort of on. You can never really get torque wrenches in here. The torque spec is about 8 foot-pounds, but you kind of do by feel, and you see you don't really put much force into it. So you just kind of barely feel it out until you kind of feel it tension up, and that's typically around 8 foot-pounds. You can verify once you get it off the stand as well, but people don't typically even torque these from most shops. Just because of how small the bolt is. But if you are going to torque it, that is the spec. I never had an issue with these leaking. And you can see a nice solid bead coming out of there. And then get down in here. And that's pretty good. And then we have a tool to install the rear main seal once it's off the stand, because it's easy to catch the inside lip on those. And then again, you're gonna see a small little bead coming out of the bottom of each side if you did a good job. Alright, so now you have your dowels in right there and there. There was an extra one, so once they gave us more, you know, don't forget your O-ring there. And then we got our pan all gooped up. So key thing, don't try to fill up that O-ring channel. That's just for expansion. And then the front ones where the bolts go through the lower pan section, you want to surround those fully. Otherwise oil can get through on the inside or outside depending on what you miss. So that's just those ones there and these ones here, and then this one on this side. And then you can see the rest, they don't go through. So we got a small pan repair there, but it's fine. So I'll get this stuck on there and show you just bolting it on. Alright, so pan's on. So again, you just kind of go around and do it all kind of by feel, and then if you want to go back later when the sealant starts to soften to torque it up, you can, but it's simple. These are all 12 mil, and then there's some larger 14 mil head bolts in the rear. So I just want to go around all that, and we can clean up the excess in the front. And then there's already a nice bead on the inside, which you don't really need to mess with. But outside you can see a nice good seal, so we know it's not going to leak. And be kind of liberal with your sealant, that way you don't have any leaks later. Switch up our socket. And make sure these are nice and tight. Kind of limit your torque if you kind of hold it towards the base of the ratchet as well. But these larger ones, don't really have to worry about breaking the bolt. Then as you can see, all good seal all the way around. And on the rear, there's a nice good bead. So the only one that kind of looks a little excess is on the front. So it's not a big deal to clean up. And then from there we can get our oil pan baffle in, the pickup, and the lower pan, and then flip it over and get everything timed up. Alright, Next thing on the list is putting on your oil pump pickup, and can't forget your gasket. So you put that on there, and we have a Tomei baffle kit. So it's all cleaned up. Put this on like so, and then you gotta put this on above it. See how your stud is lined up in there, because this is going to line up and bolt to this as well. And then the other part of the baffle go on after that. So we'll get these nuts on and bolts, and I'll show you how the rest of the baffle kit goes. Alright, so we're getting our oil pickup on. These are going to be, I believe the manual said 6.5 foot-pounds. We just went just over that because it seems a little low, but just for safety. Put that on, and then you want to put this bolt, and this bolt through, because then there's one more piece to the baffle kit, and then there's a notch here that goes around the pickup arm, and then the rest of the bolts will start to line up there, here, and here. So we'll get those bolted on, and after that is the lower pan. Alright, so all of our baffle bolts are going to be the same torque spec, so pretty simple layout. You just have such a long extension, it'd be a little easier, but for filming purposes, definitely easier than that. Work your way around. Had one extra bolt in the kit. Don't know if the factory pan is supposed to have the other one, I don't remember. But all these ones are in, so that's what matters. So that's torqued, and now we just have to get our other lower pan cleaned up and put this all back together. Alright, got the pan cleaned up, usual thing. Get all your silicone on there and on the inside of the bolt holes instead of the outside, because that's where your leak points will end up being. So pretty simple thing, just match up the shape and slap her on, but I'm gonna need two hands, so I'll shut off the camera for a second and I'll show you guys when the bolts are in. Alright, same deal as the last ones. These are about the same size bolt, so the torque spec is going to be the same. That is going to be 78 inch-pounds, or about 6.5 foot-pounds. So kind of do all these up. Wait for a little click. And there's quite a bit of these, so it does take a little bit, but... And then if you do reuse your pan, if it's not a new one, they typically get bent up taking off, so when you're putting all the bolts in, you just kind of cinch them by hand and not put too much stress on one bolt. So I did that beforehand. And then once they're kind of sit down, then you come back and torque them around. As you can see, you still get a little bit of more squish out of it than it just being bottomed out. Something like that, where you still have the pan gap. She kind of gets a little closer and squeezes it out. It's not going to be a big deal once it hardens, but there's still a small gap there. And you just keep working your way around. I still have to find my drain bolt. I don't know where I put it. I had a ready one, but it's not a big deal if I have to order a new one. We were trying to do this slightly on a more budget, just for audience. It's going to be more budget channel instead of big Adam LZ builds, spending tons of money on every car. Once you're all torqued up, then you're all good. We got Stevie coming in, bringing some more brake clean, like a G.
Yo.
And bottom end is assembled. What do you think?
Looks like it's assembled.
Sick. Alright, we got our new OEM Toyota head gasket here. As you can see, there's little copper bits that you can see that is going to face down on the engine. Simply line up your dowels, and then it drops right on. All your holes line up. So now we have to get our head over here. Left it mostly assembled. You just got to drop that on that dowel. And this one, a little hard to line up. And you're set. So now we can get our head studs in, so we just have to clean up the rest on top here and show you guys what to do from there. As you can see with the head studs, you have to have all your washers in before you put those in, otherwise you will not be able to get those in after. Alright, so now we got our head studs in, and I ran them all down, but you can kind of see you want to take each one hand tight, so just kind of where it stops. If you bottom them out, typically some engine builders will say they can rattle loose due to the vibrations, so they kind of float there just until hand tight. So kind of hold your ratchet at the base and just do it up until you feel tension, and that's the best way to do these. Stops there, stops there, stops there, there, get a little there, there, and there. So now we're all set. Now we got to get the nuts on top of those, grease them up with the Moly Lube, and then there's a 3-step torque procedure. You go 30, 60, and then 85, and then you're set. So we'll get those lubed up and set on there, and then we'll get on to the torquing process. Alright, all of our nuts are on, so we're going to start our torque sequence. So you want to start in the middle and work your way out either end. So we start on 30 foot-pounds until we get a click, go to the next one, and then start diagonal from that, and jump over here, and go down, diagonal again, and you just work your way around the engine until all your bolts are torqued. And the last one's in the front here. And then the next you go up to 60 and you just do the same pattern until you're done. So we're just gonna skip forward because you guys don't need to watch the same thing 3 times. So. Alright, so off camera we got the water pump on. You have to do that before doing your whole timing system. There's just an O-ring on there. And then these new bolts you can see is what holds it to the engine. So now we got our cam set up, and you just have to go around the sequence, same as doing the head. These are going to be 14 foot-pounds, and you do need sealant on the cap, just so it doesn't leak. It's from the factory service like that. So let's get these torqued up. I can see if I can have the sequence put on screen, but it's pretty straightforward. You start from the inside and work your way out. So we'll get that, and then we can get to the cam gears and backing plate and show you guys how to time this thing. Alright, got our backing plate on and our cam gears slightly set up. You need to set a wrench on the flats here to hold the camshaft, and then you're going to torque these both to 59 foot-pounds. This one is a 17 mil, and then this one's a 10 millimeter socket. So going to need 2 hands for that, but it's pretty straightforward. Put your torque wrench on there and torque it to the specs specified. And then once you do that, there's a secondary cap that goes over this bolt so you don't leak oil everywhere. Alright, so our next two things is our billet timing tensioner and then your timing marks. So there's dots and lines on these. You want to line up the line, and on this one the line, but you want to make sure that your gear is, so it moves, so it's going to be fully to the right when you set it. And then for our tensioner, you want to make sure to put some blue Loctite on the bolt and make sure the washer is behind it, and then simply put it in here. Make sure your washer's still behind it, like that. And then you're pretty much set. And then you got to get your timing gear on. And then you can start putting on the belt. Alright, so I needed two hands, but you're going to see your dot lined up with that mark. This tick lined up here, and then this one's slightly offset. You want to start with this side as tight as you can get it. Make sure your gear is rotated clockwise, and then get everything on. This one's going to be a little offset, so that way when you come back on the gear, it's going to tighten up the belt like that. So then you see you line up there and all here, and then the rest is taken up with the tensioner. So once you put that in, everything will be good. So we put our old tensioner, well, it was used for slightly wet, put that in the vise, and you can reuse them. You just use a little Allen wrench, and you pull it out, and it tensions. So now we have good tension on here, and we just got to put on our cap and start getting the rest of the engine together. It's pretty straightforward from here. Just a few things left with covers, coil kit, valve covers, and just like the engine mounts and our fluid damper. So that's pretty much the main assembly of the 2J. Might be the end of the video, but it's all pretty simple stuff from there. So we'll see where it gets. I'll just finish up the engine, so can't forget your little timing belt guide, your crank sensor, and then you have this little washer. It's a little conical, and that kind of faces out. And that also guides the belt before you put on your lower cover. And then you can get that on. Get on your idler pulley here, and then you put on the upper cover after that. Alright, our engine is buttoned up, crank pulley's on. We'll do final torquing on the car with the transmission. All the covers are on. We got most of the accessory stuff on, like valve covers, mounts, waiting on new crush washer for the big center bolt for this oil filter housing and for our VVTi. And after that we can put on our AC and our power steering and alternator. But other than that, it's pretty much assembled. You got your upper water pipe here for the GE head, and it's pretty simple from that. Always left our hose on. It's pretty hard to get to in the car. And then we can put on our coils while it's out. But otherwise, video wise, we're about done. Don't really need to show much more. We should have the engine back in the car this week, and then we have to wait for our turbo to get back from Boost Lab, and then it'll be a first start. So hopefully that will all come pretty soon. And yep, so that'll probably conclude this video, and catch you guys next time.